So as you can see, I found this handy dandy tier list, and I just left it at default because there's no real point in customizing all these because I don't really, of all the songs I buy, I usually don't have them in anything under a C. A couple songs will pop up every once in a while where I'm just like, man, that's just bad. So it would go in the D category, but we will see how that goes. But anyway, let's get into this here tier list of Metallica's debut. Hell yeah, kill 'em all. So yeah, gotta hit the lights. That's an immediate S for me. I love the energy. I love the energy, the construction of the song itself, and just the riff. You know, that main riff's a really good, catchy riff. And if I remember correctly, I believe that was James Hetfield's first riff he wrote for Metallica. So it was a good sign of things to come in the future. And I was overall great song, great chorus, good, nice simple chorus, a lot of good shredding, great thrash song. All right, then we got the Four Horsemen. I really like the Four Horsemen, but I don't like it as much as like whenever I think of Kill 'Em All and whenever I go to songs on Kill 'Em All, I don't normally pick the Four Horsemen, but I do enjoy it a lot when I listen to it. So I'd probably put it at an A. I like the riff and I like the song structure. And controversially, I like this song about even to the Megadeth version of it, or kind of the versions of each other. I like them both, but I like them for different reasons. The little middle section in the Metallica version is really fun, and I like how it's kind of noodly and shreddy and stuff before it smashes back into kind of the main sort of structure of the song. But yeah, overall, I like the song a lot, but it doesn't reach epic tier for me. All right, and I'm not going in album order. These were in kind of a random order, and I didn't feel like putting them in album order just because I'm lazy and I don't want to take the 2 minutes it would take to do that. Sue me. Okay, so next we got Jump in the Fire. I consider it kind of average. There's no real part that stands out to me for that as a song, just on the album. It's kind of like it's okay. And like I said, C is usually going to be like my average. Like this song is average, so it's not terrible, but it's not great. You know, there's nothing really bad about it, or there's nothing really that good about it. So I'd put it as C. It's a track that I don't really come back to listen to, unless I'm just listening to Kill 'Em All while playing a video game or doing some chores or something. So not high up on my list, but not terrible in my eyes. All right, then we get Mota Breath, and I'd have to say that I like Motor Breath more than Jump in the Fire. Like I think I enjoy listening to Motor Breath just because it's a little bit more thrashy, a little bit more aggressive. You know, and the chorus is just kind of like a spitfire of different, I love the way that James Hetfield sings it. It was just like Motor Breath. It's how I live my life. Just kind of spitting it out. I kind of like that vibe. I also just like how fast and how kind of shifty the riff is in terms of like how it like chugs on how it kind of like rapidly chugs on certain notes on the guitar. All right, then we got No Remorse. This is another one that I put up in the A category. I really like the structure of it. I like the main riff of it. I just like the riffs in it a lot, especially like it when it speeds up, and they just kind of go nuts with the speed up section in it. And just overall, really like it. I really like the ending as well. Plus, the live version I come back to is from the 2008 show in Rock Am Ring, and it's just like I love that. I love that shit. All right, next we got Whiplash going into S tier because just a good thrasher, just a good solid, just constant barrage of just aggressive notes and just shit hitting you in the face. You know, the music fits with the title is the best way I could put it. The music fits with the title, so there's pretty much not much else that you can really add to that in my opinion. It's just the song fits. It works as a thrashy song about Whiplash. It's great. And also just the lyrics in it are really cool. How they customize it live to we never stop, we never quit because you are Metallica. You know, in live shows, just great audience interaction song. And also just a lot of great fun of how they tweak the lyrics to like whatever city they happen to be in at the time. or wherever they happen to be, and it's just a good song on the record, and a good song live. All right, then we got Phantom Lord. I don't remember much of Phantom Lord every time I listen to the album, so I probably put it at C. Like, I don't remember much of it besides like the ending where James is like screaming Phantom Lord. But apart from that, I don't really remember it. I don't have anything I dislike about from what I do remember, but I just don't have anything that really sticks in my head about it. All right, then we got Anesthesia Pulling Teeth. Um, I really like it for the sake of Cliff Burton's performance in it, as kind of doing his kind of lead bass thing. And it's a really interesting kind of launching pad in their discography. Like when you look at Anesthesia Pulling Teeth, and then you see how that progresses to things like For Whom the Bell Tolls, and then you see how that progresses to Orion. And so it's a really interesting progression to see Cliff's sort of style and how they write a song around his style into like different avenues. And also, I just think that Cliff Burton was a great fucking bass player. You know, pretty. It's one of those unsaid truths. It's like, is water wet? Yes. Was Cliff a great bass player? Absolutely. And just a great performance there. All right, then we got Seek and Destroy. That's immediately going up an S just because crowd participation is fucking fantastic for that song live. It is amazing. Also, it's just really catchy. It's got a good groove to it, you know. And I like how it does that little shift during the solos, during the kind of the middle bit where you get the solo, where you get kind of the chugging, song. Then it kicks it up for a solo. You have a little bit of a thrashy thing. Then it comes back for a nice sort of roundabout where you come back to the structure of the verse and the chorus. And I really like the outro riff of Seek and Destroy. I really like it. It's a really good. I believe it's a chromatic scale. I'm not quite. I know a lot about playing guitar, but I don't know a lot about the terminology about playing guitar, which makes no sense to me. But whatever. I like playing it, and I know how to play it, sort of. But anyway, great song, good riffs, solid chorus. All right, then we got Metal Militia, and Metal Militia was actually kind of a thing that the more I've listened to it, the more it kind of grows on me. And I like it a good bit. And here's the thing: is I'm not sure if I'd put it in B tier because it's not a song that I would come back to when listening to the album. But as it's kind of grown in popularity, kind of in my subconscious, if you will, it's become kind of a fun little thing. The thing is here, see, is it on par with Four Horsemen, No Remorse, and Pulling Teeth, or is it on par with Motor Breath for me? It's the biggest thing. I'd probably put it in Motor Breath territory because it's a good song, but it's not one that I immediately think of when I think of the album, and it's not one that I immediately pick when I do think of the album. Like kind of a good way to break this down, actually, based on the list here, is just C is the stuff that I forget is on the album, but I enjoy when I listen to it. B is stuff that I remember parts of, but whenever I think of the album, these are not in the ones that pop up on the list. Whenever I think of the album, I think of all the S and A tiers, and whenever I pick the album, I am immediately wanting to skip to Hit the Lights, Whiplash, and Seek and Destroy. And it's kind of interesting how I picked these three tracks because you got one at the beginning, one in the middle, and then one at the end, which is kind of neat. But yeah, it's just kind of a fun little. This is kind of a fun little thing, and I did not expect this to go by so quick. So I don't know. I thought the stream would last a little longer, but it's only been going for what, like 20 minutes. Yeah, and this is one thing about using StreamYards is for some reason it says I'm live for like an extra 2 hours and 50 minutes from when I actually start, and I have no idea how to fix that. So I have no real idea how long I've been going until I actually like do some math on it. It's really weird. Do you think you'd be able to just do what you got to do on it? But one thing I am kind of thinking about now is we did this list kind of quick, so let's do Ride the Lightning while we're here. Fuck it. Let's see. Lightning Metallica. All right, perfection. I kind of like this tier list. That is actually kind of funny. All right, let's get these ads out of here. I hate the ads that pop up and just ruin the moment. There was a sweet spot where the ad didn't pop up. There it is. There we go. All right, so all right, I'm gonna change that to average because mediocre to me is not kind of like mediocre to me is not like average, which I think the word actually means like average or is something that is very non-special. But I'm kind of like eh. I'm just gonna go ahead and change all these back over to S, A, B, C, and D just for the sake of it. And yeah, so let's figure out. See, these things are written really weird. All right, so we'll go through the list and kind of figure out. Some of the pictures I would assume would give away what they actually are. Some of them say it, but some of them don't. So I'm gonna kind of pick and choose here. So "Fight Fire with Fire," I think is a good song, and it's just a barrage of just notes just flying at you, just going crazy with just that riff. That is a fast and demanding riff to keep that up for a whole like I think it's like 4 solid minutes or at least 3.5 solid minutes of just just that riff pounding just on your right hand. And like as a guitar player, I appreciate James Hetfield's rhythmic strength being able to put that shit up for so long, along with a lot of other players. But just for the sake of this. All right, so I'm assuming this is the title track because I don't see any words on it. I really like the title track, but I don't know if I put an S or A tier. It's like I like the riff, I like the song structure, and I like the middle section where you get the kind of speed up, then you get the solo over a slow and sped up section, then you get another sped up section, and then you come back to a verse chorus structure before the end. Really kind of heralded what they were going to do, kind of coming forward with their title tracks in a way, because a lot of their other title track songs do that sort of thing too. But I'd probably put you in A because I enjoy the song a lot, but I don't know if I'd come back to it immediately every time I listen to the album. All right, so got Fade. I'm kind of just picking and choosing from this list down here randomly. Fade to Black's definitely going up there. I think it's a great song and a great step forward in terms of the diversity of stuff that Metallica could do. Also introduced people to the idea of the Metallica ballad where it like speeds up over time. You get a big solo. That's a cool thing I always liked about Metallica ballads is that several of them have that sort of, it's like it's somber and dark and deep, and then it gets heavy and then we get a great like instrumental like second half. That's just cool. All right. Room the Bell Tolls, obviously going up in S because I mean who the fuck wouldn't put it up there? Great rhythm of just doom and just that Cliff Burton bass line is so good. It's also just heavy. For being how simple it is, just it's heavy. It's just like, yeah, you're gonna die. You're gonna die today. All right, so okay. This is probably Trapped Under Ice. I like Trapped Under Ice pretty decently. I probably put it right there with Fight Fire with Fire. I like the riffs in it, and I like the song, but it's not one of those things that I come back to the album for. All right, then we got Escape, and I've seen a lot of different things about Escape, where a lot of people say that Escape is like I've heard and seen things where apparently James Hetfield doesn't like this song, and they apparently tried to write it to make a song that was a little bit more commercial for this album, so they didn't like having to do that. Personally, I don't give a fuck about that. I like the song. Like I like the song. So I mean, I'd put it in B because it's not one that jumps out at you. At least it doesn't jump out at me whenever I'm listening to the album. But I think it's a pretty good song. I don't think it's Metallica at their best. It's kind of like this song is kind of like Load and Reload for me. it's like I really like a lot of songs on Load and Reload, but they're not the Metallica wheelhouse where they are firing on all cylinders, like when they're doing thrashier things, you know. But yeah, I like that song a good bit. All right, Creeping Death, definitely going up there. Just the lyrical content, the chorus, and that breakdown after the solo is such a good crowd moment when you've got like tens of thousands of people just chanting "Die, die, die, die." It's such a good live moment. It's always a great thing to see them play that live and just seeing the crowd participation during it. All right, okay, this has got to be Call of Cthulhu or Cthulhu or Cthulhu. What is the canon way to say that word? Is it Cthulhu or Cthulhu? Because I've heard it both ways. I've not heard it from someone who's like an educated like source on the matter. But this is one thing that might be a little controversial. I don't really care that much about the Call of Cthulhu in general, so I'd put it probably right here. Like I think it's a fun listen while I listen to it, but I never actually want to go back and listen to it. Whenever I listen to this album, it's like it's a great ending to the album, especially with the way it kind of ends with that big bombastic sort of climactic crescendo at the end. But I'm just not that big of a fan of the song in general, and that's just like I'm not the biggest fan of it. I guess I should say. Like I like it, I like listening to it, but I'm just not the biggest fan that would put it on often whenever I'm playing stuff or whatever. But yeah, that's a pretty decent song. And I figured while we're here, let's just do all of Metallica's '80s content while we're sitting here, just because this stream was all kind of short. We're just gonna have a lot of fun with this. Gonna have a lot of fun with this. Master of Puppets. Master of Puppets. All right. All right. So just get these back to where we want them to be. All right. I've got a little bit of lore with the Master of Puppets album because the first song that introduced me to Metallica, where I like became interested in them, was Battery from playing Rock Band 2 back in the day. I heard Battery and I was like, this intro is so amazing, and yeah, definitely going an S tier for me. It's just that intro with the kind of like thick Spanish guitar sounds where they're really layered and harmonized. It's got such a great classical sort of sound to it. And then you get the electrification of it, which makes it sound even more epic and heavy and grand. And then you get the slam when the real song kicks in, and you just get that fast, tight rhythm, of the main Battery riff, just kind of like beating you over the head for most of the song from that point on. And just the entire song, every riff is just fucking great in Battery, and I love it so much. I love the intro. I love the slam of the main riff. I love the like chorus sort of riff that goes under that kind of matches with the main riff, but it's a little different. And I like the bridge section with the lead guitar part before the solo starts. It's got a really good shreddy solo. Then the sort of like odd time thing where that it's a good headbanging, just like fuck yeah sort of riff. Just a lot of great shit. Just a lot of great shit. Just a great song from front to back. Great song. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, let's do the title track. Title track's definitely going up there. One of Metallica's greatest songs ever, just for the whole package, right? Great aggression, great performances, a good bit of thrashy kind of groove, a great melodic middle section that shows the diversity of what Metallica can do and what they can do well. Got a very great doom-ridden riff building back up before the main solo, and then from there to the end, just a great main riff, extremely catchy pre-chorus and chorus, and just great song overall. and just a really interesting subject matter that you can apply to kind of different things, even though it's dealing mainly talking mainly about like drugs and drug addiction. Like you can kind of expand it out to a lot of great things. So just really great song. Probably one of Metallica's like top 3 songs. Definitely, it's definitely in the top 3 or 5. All right, so let's see which ones would be the thing that should not be. I'm assuming it's the Cthulhu looking one. Yeah. All right, so the thing that should not be. I'm kind of mid on this song, to be honest. Like, of all the songs on the album, it's the one I skipped the most. I guess it's because I want to get to other stuff, just because it's got a good, ominous, sort of creepy riff, but the rest of the song just doesn't stand out to me that much. And it's a good song. Like, it's a good song, but in terms of the entirety of the album, it is the song I skipped the most on it. Just because it's the actually, now I think about it, of all the songs on the album, it's probably the one with the least amount of dynamics in it. Probably tied with Disposable Heroes, but it's rather slow. It's slow, and the dynamics in it are rather limited compared to everything else. And I like songs with a lot of dynamics, as you can see from the top 2 so far. All right. And then we get Welcome Home Sanitarium. I think that's an A. I really enjoy that song. I really love the way the main riff is kind of constructed, where it's kind of in a weird time signature. I believe it's in 5/4. So it's weird. So like you get that little kind of hiccup in between, like, or like the riff is like a 4/4, then like a 5/4 or something like that, where it's got a little bit of a hiccup before it repeats the riff. The main like soft, like clean picking riff during the verses. But I really like it, and I really like the build up. The only thing I don't really care for about Welcome Home that kind of puts it below S tier is that I'm not that big of a fan of the solo of it. I like everything around the solo. Like I like the chorus. I like the intro solos that are kind of more light and melodic and things like that. But yeah, I just don't really care about the solo in general, but just everything around the solo I think is really good. It's not to say the solo is bad. It's just the solo doesn't stand out to me like Fade to Black or One's solos do. Because those solos are fantastic. The instrumental sections in the second half of both of those songs are really good. The instrumental bit here is also good, but the solo itself just doesn't have a lot of luster for me. All right, now let's get to Disposable Heroes. I really like Disposable Heroes. That machine gun riff for 8 solid minutes gets to me. It's just so much fun it's fun. It's a fun riff to experience. It's a fun riff to actually play. And it's just a fun riff in general that's just demanding, and like the song itself is such a visceral, violent piece of music. Like it's so aggressive and in your face and fast and so machine gun, aggressive that it's just, I love it. I love it. I love it so much. And just the way they handle talking about warfare with the riffs underneath it is such a good, ominous machine gun style, like, like you're gonna fucking die, and we're the ones that control when you die. Just a great metal, just a full-on war, like a war metal song. All right, so now let's get into Leper Messiah. I like Leper Messiah a good deal. I like it a lot. I like the main riff and how it's kind of weird. It's very odd sort of riff, and I think I don't know what the actual answer is, but I've heard that Dave Mustaine was the one that actually wrote it, and then Metallica tweaked it a little bit. But either way, great riff. And I like when the song does its kind of shift where it starts to speed up and get more aggressive, and just the core, the subject matter and chorus of it is really poignant. It's like I forget exactly each word in the chorus, but it's like send me money, send me something, heaven you will meet, make your contribution, and you'll get a better seat. It's like that's such a poignant sort of like like kind of a fuck you for trying to buy your way into heaven sort of a thing, but also condemning the people that are like asking people to pay them to get into heaven when, you don't have to do that, depending on what your beliefs are. I don't believe you have to. All right, but yeah, good song. I really like the different shifts in it, and the riff is very unique. Now we get to Orion, and I got to put that fucker up there. Orion is one of those songs that I can listen on loop to and just be taken in. I'm stuck in the spacey kind of psychedelicness of it all. Like it's got such a great vibe, and it's such a great Cliff Burton song. Just like all the riffs, the way the way the dynamic works, where you get that fade in of the bass and the drums, and then you get the guitars coming in with that kind of like, it's almost a gentle chugging riff, which you don't really see that often, but it's a very gentle sort of melodic riff before you get the and that riff has got a great kind of drive to it. And then when you hit the middle bit with the melodic sort of bass, walking bass line and the guitar melody over it, such a soothing sort of like it's spacey but somber, but also very it's sort of it's kind of a thing where it's like emotionally open to whatever you're feeling at the time. So if you feel sad, you can feel sad in the moment. If you feel kind of lost, you can feel lost in the moment. If you feel a little um if you feel kind of content, it works. Like it's a weird musical space where you can kind of just project your emotions into that section and just kind of vibe with the music, since there's no words. And I think that's one of the best things about instrumental music is you can kind of put your own interpretation and emotion into the songs and have your own sort of moment, because there's no lyrics, so there is no subject matter. It's just the music and the sound and how it moves you on a personal level. And that's one thing that I love about music in general, is just how it makes you feel, and how different types of music can make you feel certain ways, but how you feel also affects the music in your own way, to your ears, like when certain things happen, or when certain lyrics or riffs or melodies or solos or passages come through. Just music is just magical. Music is just magical. But yeah, fantastic Cliff Burton song. And um, what a way to, I think that's probably Cliff Burton's best song that he did with them. And I just love it. That's one of the few songs in general that I can put on loop and be totally happy with listening to it on loop. Very few songs get that sort of pass from me, but I just love that song. All right, now we got the last track, Damage Incorporated. Some people have leveled a criticism that Damage Incorporated is kind of an ending that is kind of a sort of a thriller rather than a filler rather than thriller. Some people have said that. I disagree. I think it's a really fun song to kind of kick the energy back up at the end of the album. But I do kind of wonder what the dynamic would be like if we had Damage Incorporated after Leper Messiah, and then we had Orion be the ending of the album. Just because I think Orion as an ending would kind of leave you with kind of an emotional sort of ending, kind of an emotional farewell as opposed to a thrashy farewell. But all things considered, really like Damage Incorporated's song structure. I like how it's very in your face, very aggressive. And when James Hetfield says go, and then Kirk just starts shredding that solo out, it's such a great little moment of like, it's time to just metal up and fucking shred. And then they metal up and fucking shred. And it's just a great thing. So yeah, here's that tier list. I actually didn't expect this to be down as far on the list, but I guess that's because you don't really think about songs you don't really care about until you are kind of forced to think about them. So it's a very weird thing. Very weird thing. So let's do And Justice for All, and then we'll end this stream. Let's see how this goes. Oh man, doing justice stuff means that I'm gonna get a bajillion Justice things pop up. All right. So oh man, I love the artwork here. It's very high quality. But at least they're in order. So that's good. All right, so let's start off with Blackened. I put it at A. I really enjoy Blackened. I enjoy the main riff. I like how bouncy it is. Kudos to Jason Newsted for writing it. That's sort of like just that bouncy riff. And the middle section before the solo, I really like, where it's got kind of a grooving kind of like, I don't know what you'd call that guitar pattern, but it's kind of a chug and then some lead stuff thrown in, and just the way they orchestrate that and how it slowly builds into the solo. Really like that. So yeah, pretty good song. But it does feel a little bit overlong at times, which is kind of a problem for this album as a whole. But yeah, still a good song. All right, then we get the title track and Justice for All. Great tune. Excuse me one second. It is very hot in my office right now where I record these, so I get a little dehydrated. Drink water, or at least drink liquids. But yeah, so in Justice for All, I like a lot of the song, but there's that bit in the middle after the solo where I kind of want to get back to the main riff, get back there's a certain section from the end of the guitar solo, or not the end of the guitar solo. It's kind of like you have the end of the guitar solo, and then you get that the big kind of like crashy like headbangy bit where it's like that headbangy bit. And the bit that gets me is the bit where it slows down, and before we get back to what the intro was sort of like, where you get that dun 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 dun. Like from the bit where it starts slowing down right to that big chord before they get back into the main riff sort of groove. That section is a section I'm not that big of a fan of, and it's one of those sections that makes me want to skip. Like if I could skip sections of songs, that's one of the sections of the song that I would skip. It's just one of those sections that I'm not really that big of a fan of. And that's the one thing that kind of keeps the title track from being S tier for me. Is I like the main riff, I like the odd timing of it, and I like the lyrics of it, the pre-chorus and the chorus of it. It's just that little slowdown bit after the solo really gets to me, or after the headbangy bit after the solo, just really gets to me, and I'm just not that big of a fan of it. But yeah, it is what it is, as they say. But now we get Eye of the Beholder. Eye of the Beholder is kind of a very average song for me. The riff is feels like they could do more with the riff, in my opinion. Like the riff is just kind of like just a chug on like one note, and then like throwing a chord every once in a while. But it's just it feels over, like that's one of the tracks that feels the most like overlong, in my opinion. It feels like it's very stretched out. Like if you sped that song up, I feel like it could have some fun. Where instead of doing like if you did that faster, like something that makes it a little bit more excited than just, because it's got that kind of droning sort of feeling throughout the whole song, where it's just kind of like and yeah, like even with the chorus, which I think is a good chorus, it's still kind of a song that feels like it just kind of goes on and on and on, when it doesn't really. Like if I remember correctly, I think it's shorter than Blackened and several other songs, but it just kind of goes and goes and goes, and I kind of want it to end. So like of all the follow-ups to a title track, I think this is probably the weakest in my opinion. But yeah. All right, then we get to One, obviously going in S tier. Fucking fantastic song. Great lyrics, great musical orchestration, fantastic solos throughout by Kirk Hammett. Great instrumental section at the end with the dual guitars doing their melody before just that, that whole like machine gun section before and after the solo and the lead stuff, it's just such a great just kind of encapsulation of just kind of like losing your mind after being in the situation that like the character is like in the story of one, with the whole Johnny got his gun, he lost his limbs, it's like I cannot speak, I cannot, he can't see, he can't speak, he can't, he's like he just wants to die. It's a song that is just so dark from like every aspect of dealing with the idea of being almost totally crippled, right? You can't walk, you don't have arms, you don't have legs, you can't see, you can't speak. You're just kind of there, but you can feel that you're there. It's like you're so close to dead, but you're not dead. You can't do anything to change it. It's just such a dark and sad song. But great performances all around. Just great performances. All right, then we get The Shortest Straw. I like The Shortest Straw, but I don't like it as much as Blackened and Injustice for All. I think it's got a good riff. Good riff, good chorus, and I like the solo of it. But apart from that, nothing much really stands out to me from it, besides just the odd riff kind of thing where it's kind of got that like that kind of like weird. It's like sped up swing music almost, where it's like but it's like faster. But other than that, like I think it's a song that I enjoy listening to, but I don't go back to it. But it's not one that I usually skip. If I'm listening to the whole album, Either Beholder, I would definitely skip most of the time. All right, now we got Harvester of Sorrows. I'm putting that in A just because I like that song a good bit, and I like the riffs in it. I like the flow between the kind of like clean part of the just that whole riff and how they intertwine that riff with a clean version, an electric version, and then how they lead into other riffs with it, like the noodly bit after the solo. It's got a good groove to it without being fully chugging the entire time. Which is kind of like Harvester of Sorrow has a really good groove to it that Eye of the Beholder desperately wanted to do, but doesn't really achieve, and it's kind of boring. Eye of the Beholder is a little boring, but Harvester is good. All right, now we get Frayed Ends of Sanity. I like Frayed Ends a lot. I like how the main riff is kind of a play on that Wizard of Oz song, or the Wizard of Oz sort of chant, where you got that like, "All we own, we owe," that main riff at the beginning, and how they turn that riff into a different type of riff. It's just a really cool. It's just a really cool thing that I enjoy quite a lot. I enjoy it quite a lot. I think it's a great song, and I really like the. I don't know what riff you would call it. If you call it a bridge riff, or if you call it like a breakdown riff, or just a build-up riff, or whatever you would call it. But just that quick little I love how like noodly and kind of like tight that riff is, where it's kind of like a quick burst of noodles, and then you get some quick like tight like open like palm muted like E string stuff, then you get more noodling, and then it goes back. Like I like the dynamic of that whole riff. It's just a cool riff. Good song. All right, To Live Is to Die. I'd see To Live Is to Die is tough for me because there are really great parts in the song, but it just moves so slowly between the parts that it kind of like the main riff I consider kind of boring and very slower than it needs to be. But that melodic section in the middle is the bit that's like my favorite part of it, and I love that. But also, I'm not a fan of having having words in an instrumental like they had in this song. I like the words. I just don't like the words in this song, so to speak, right? But it's just the middle section is kind of thing that gets it to me, and that's the kind of thing where it's like the middle section would be in an A, but the rest of the song's kind of in a C, so I guess I put it at B. But Yeah, just kind of like it's got really good parts, but it's also got parts that really drag. And I think that Eye of the Beholder and parts of To Live Is to Die are really good examples of how this album kind of drug out longer than it really needed to. Like you could make a tighter album that was maybe like 5 minutes shorter that would be just as good. If you just cut out a couple riffs, or if you took out certain sections or made them shorter. You know what I mean? All right, but now we get Dyer's Eve. I put that up at an A because I like Dyer's Eve. I like the riff, and I like the subject matter of kind of telling kind of being mad at your parents for being hypocrites and just kind of telling them to fuck off. I kind of like that. I don't have a problem with my parents, but I like how the song is orchestrated as sort of like a letter to your to. It's kind of like a letter from a child to parents that let them down, sort of a thing. And I like that whole vibe. I like how it's executed and how aggressive it is. Let's get this going. Yeah, so I found a nice tier list on the internet that's got pretty much all of Metallica's studio albums, which I thought was pretty fun. And yeah, I figured we'd just get into it. And this is all the studio recordings for studio albums, so it's not including like some of the other stuff they did. Like the S&M concert, which was kind of a tweak on old stuff, but also had some new stuff. And it doesn't include Garage Inc., but I'm kind of okay with that. Just because I don't really have much to say in terms of Metallica's like covering of stuff. I like the way they cover things, but that's really it. I don't have much to say about it in terms of like how they orchestrate it beyond I like it and I think it's neat. But when it comes to their original stuff, it's quite interesting to talk about. But anyway, beginning with the 90s albums and beginning of the 90s albums. And I mean, what better place to start off than with the Black Album and Enter Sandman. Now, despite being massively overplayed by like everybody, I still think it's a fantastic song. I still think it's a great song. That main riff is a great riff, and the structure of it's really well done. Right, the way it just sort of builds and builds and builds until you get the slam of the main riff at the beginning, and then from there it's just kind of like that. It's a super tight groove, is what I would call it. It's a tight groove. Got some really good performances. And just the overall sound it was a really great track to usher in the sound of the Black Album, just in terms of how heavy it is, how crisp and clean all the things are in the production, and also kind of serves as a stark contrast to And Justice for All's production, which I forgot if I mentioned it or not in the last stream, but that production was very lacking. It wasn't outright terrible as much as it was just really mishandled. But Enter Sandman, great song, even if it's a bit overplayed. All right, now we got Sad But True. Now, I would put Sad But True at great because while I think it's a great tune, I don't think it has the same kind of staying power and the kind of, like the song structure itself is just not as impressive as Enter Sandman is. Especially because Enter Sandman's main riff is a really fucking good riff. Sad But True riff's great. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not quite up there for Enter Sandman. But I do like the orchestration of how heavy that riff comes across, because even though it's not technically like that heavy in terms of like actual notes and how like low tuned the guitars are at the time, it still comes across as a hammer hitting you in the face. So it's got a great just hammer vibe of just beating the shit out of somebody, but sonically. So good tune, like the lyrics, and I really like the just the way they hammer home the riff at different points in the song. All right, now we get Holier Than Thou. I really like Holier Than Thou. I'd put it on par with Sad But True, but for different reasons. And I'm really glad that for fans of Metallica who've watched the documentary a year and a half in the life of Metallica, that I recall that conversation between Lars Ulrich and Bob Rock, where they're talking about what should be the opener to the album, right? Because every album opener for Metallica up to this point had been a high energy track, whether it be Hit the Lights, Fight Fire with Fire, Battery, or Blackened, right? So Holier Than Thou was poised to be the opener for a little while. And I'm so glad that it wasn't, because I think Enter Sandman is a better opener because it sets the tone for the entirety of the album. Holier Than Thou is very much kind of a link from the past into the future sort of a thing, but Enter Sandman has such a broader statement about the direction of the album as a whole. And even though Holier Than Thou I think is a great song, as you can see, it's not as good of an opener as Enter Sandman is, and partially because of the vibe. Like Holier Than Thou just kind of slams in, and it's got a great build up, but it's got a great build up at the end. Whereas Enter Sandman, gives you a great idea of where the album's going in terms of the sonic power of it, the sound, and the overall production of it. Holier Than Thou just kind of slams in, does its thing, briefly ramps up again, and then it's out. But Enter Sandman has such a massive sort of opening presence that if they opened it with Holier Than Thou, I think the album would have had a little bit of a harder time. Just because, Enter Sandman's a great build up and a great introduction to sort of this kind of era of Metallica in a way. And also just Holier Than Thou's got a good riff, but it's not got an Enter Sandman riff. I like how me talking about this one song just had me reference the crap out of Enter Sandman. But anyway, all right, now we get to The Unforgiven. I fucking love The Unforgiven, and I love the way it's orchestrated differently from what they did in the past with their ballads. Where instead of having the light verse and the heavy chorus, they had the heavy verse and the light chorus, and I really like that dynamic shift. And also just the way the parts are orchestrated, where you've got like the acoustic guitar, doing that, mixed with the, it's got a very Western vibe. And when it hits that like chorus, and the dynamic of the song is very interesting when you look at how it is in its entirety, right? Because you get the kind of a Western style opening with the horn and then the acoustic guitar, then the clean guitar part over it. And then you slam into the verse where like get some contemplative shit, right? And then when you hit the chorus, it's almost like all the shit fades away and you just get the point of the song. When you get the lines in the chorus. And I think that's a thing where, when you have that quiet moment with the chorus, in a way, it kind of strengthens the point of the lyrics of the chorus when you have it be quiet, where you can really focus on the words and not just the power of the music in itself. And I think that's something that people often overlook, is how sometimes being quiet during a chorus can help get the point across even clearer. You know what I mean? But just I love that dynamic. Also, great guitar solo by Kirk Hammett. Fantastic solo. It's not my personal favorite of his, but it is a really great, some could say, guitar player of the year solo. But for all of the guys that watch the documentary, that's a little reference for you. But yeah, fantastic tune. All right, now we get to Wherever I May Roam. I would put this at great because I really like the riff. And it's a really good road dog song for like anybody that like is on the road all the time. For whatever purpose, it kind of extends outward of just being in a band. Like you can kind of apply it to different things about, whether you're like a trucker or whether you're like a traveling like salesman or something, just or just anybody. It's a good road song, and the only thing that I don't like about, or the only thing that I'm not that big of a fan of in terms of Wherever I May Roam, and this also applies to The Unforgiven and Enter Sandman, is I don't like songs. I don't like songs having fade outs. I would rather they have a hard end, right? Like I don't like the fade out sort of thing. Now that's just a me thing, so I know that doesn't really impact everybody, But I just don't like how, you know, like it seems like almost every like of these 5 tracks we've talked about, 3 of them have a fade out ending. I'd rather just they just end in some way, But either way, great song, good road song for when you're just going going down the road doing what you got to do. But now let's get to Don't Tread on Me. I'd put Don't Tread on Me up there because I really like the riff. I really like how simple and heavy the riff is. You know that it's a very simple and heavy riff, which I think helps heavy riffs when they're simple. Excuse me. I had to take a drink of my agua because I'm talking so damn much. But yeah, just I like the riff and also just the whole message of "Don't tread on me." Just kind of a big fuck you to people messing with you is kind of fun. I'm a big fan of that. All right, now we get "Through the Never." I'm not really that big of a fan of "Through the Never." Of all the songs on the album, it's one that I probably skip the most out of all of them. Not to say it's a bad song, that's why it's an okay and not bad, obviously. But just I've never been a big fan of it. And I don't really care too much for the riff. The riff just feels like kind of lazy noodling in a certain way. That it's just a very sort of like the riff doesn't really go anywhere until the end, and it doesn't have that sort of dynamic that you get from other riffs on the album. Like where you get "Don't Tread on Me" being heavy, or you get riffs that go from heavy to lead, kind of like what Enter Sandman does, Sad But True does it, Wherever I May Roam does it. Riffs that have a heavy sort of bit in them, but it's mixed up with some lead, like melodic stuff in there. Like I May Roam is a good example of that. You got that dud, da na 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 dub, na 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 dub, na 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 do 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 do. You've got different dynamics in the riff itself. It's not just heavy chugging or just noodling in the same spot over and over until you hit a chord, which is the reason that I don't like Through the Never. It's just I don't like the riff in it. Also, just not that big of a fan of the chorus either. I just think it's a very mid song on the album. And this will tie into a point I'm going to make later about the album as a whole. All right. Then we get Nothing Else Matters. Of all the songs on the album, I feel like Nothing Else Matters has aged the well. Has aged the well. Wow, that's a retarded sentence. It has aged remarkably well. I think it's a song that I think has kind of trend. I think that's the song that a lot of people listened to and saw how much more there was to Metallica than what they kind of became known for. You know what I mean? Like, I think Nothing Else Matters was one of those songs that kind of transcends the band and transcends the genre and transcends the album the album in itself, right? I think it's a fantastic song that you can listen to in a lot of different areas, and it's got a mass appeal for how kind of universal it is, because when you look at the lyrics, for lack of a better word, they're very inclusive. Like people can apply what's said in Nothing Else Matters, to different types of relationships, where the end point is nothing else matters but the fact that we're here together, and you can apply that to all kinds of different things, whether it be family, whether it be friends, whether it be a love interest, or whatever it is. It's a very universal subject matter, and the way the song is orchestrated, how it's very classical. It's a really classically sort of beautiful song in the way the guitars are used. How they use pretty much all the strings during the song. And also it's unique in that it's one of the few songs where James Hetfield gets to be the soloist. And I think it's one of his better solos. You know, I personally I think it's his best solo, in my opinion. But just it's a great overall song. From start to finish, it's got a great vibe to it. Again, don't like the fade out, but that's really the only negative I have about that song. It's just that it fades out. But it's one of those. And the thing for me is, a song is fantastic when you can listen to it on loop and it never gets old. And Nothing Else Matters, similar to Orion from Master of Puppets, are songs that I can have on loop and just never be bored of them. They have such a great vibe and such a great energy to them that I think kind of transcends just listening to music because you're bored. It's one of those songs that affects my mood whenever I listen to it. And I think that's the sign of good art, is when it affects your mood when you experience that art. But yeah. So from that high praise, let's go to A Wolf and Man. And oh no. Oh, are we back? Are we good? Okay, that was weird. Sorry, I'm trying to upload a video and stream at the same time, so my internet might be having issues. But yeah, so Of Wolf and Man. I'm not that big a fan of Wolf and Man. Um, not just that's really it. I'm just not a fan of the riff, not a fan of the subject matter, not a fan of the way they do it live. Just not a fan. I mean, that's really it. Like, I don't think it's bad. It's not poorly constructed or like stupidly written or performed. It's just kind of eh, you know. Like, I don't really hate it, but it's just like I'm not. Next to Through the Never, this is probably like the second most skipped track on this album for me. All right, now let's get into The God That Failed. I really like The God That Failed. I don't like it as much as the stuff in the great category, but I definitely like it over uh, the okay category. And I like the submatter of The God That Failed, of kind of like blaming God for someone not doing something, kind of a thing. It's an interesting interpretation when you understand the history of the song and the meaning behind it. About James Hetfield's mother dying um, because she wasn't taking her dying, I believe, from cancer. Because she never sought treatment from it, because she had a belief structure that didn't let her go, that where she didn't believe in going to doctors, something like that. It's an interesting subject matter. Also, just that's a hell of a title, right? The God That Failed. That's a hell of a title. That's one thing that Metallica have always been really interesting about. Is just that they got some great titles in there. Just great. Just Now we get My Friend of Misery. I was really interested of this as an instrumental, because I heard that it was initially supposed to be an instrumental that Jason Newsted was working on before they started adding lyrics to it, and I really would have liked to have seen what that would have been like if they had completed it as an instrumental. I think that would have been a really interesting sort of take. Just oh man, stream is laggy today. I do apologize. I'm never going to be uploading a video while I stream again. Anyway, we're nearly out of this album, so let's get through this. I might try to get through these a little bit quicker, just in case my internet dies. But now we got the Struggle Within. I like Struggle Within, and I like the main highlight for me is just the solo, how it kind of matches up with the riff, and also that the that riff kind of after the chorus. I forget if it's the main riff or not, but it's like that like just a very simple chugging, just heavy, just like yeah sort of riff. But yeah, good song and a pretty good closer for the album. And this is one thing that I would say about this album that I forgot to mention about Injustice for All is I think one big problem with Metallica albums from And Justice for All and on is that they kind of became a little bloated in terms of the runtime. Where they either include a bunch of songs that probably aren't that great, but were included just because they had the space, so why not? But also, you run that thing of like, how good of an album is in this album if you take out a couple things or shorten a couple songs up? Like the Black Album as a whole is really carried by, Enter Sandman, Sabbath True, Unforgiven, Nothing Else Matters, and Wherever I May Roam, right? Like those 5 songs make up kind of the bedrock of why people come back to this album, right? There's some other good songs in there too, like "Don't Tread on Me," "Holier," "Misery," "Failed," "Struggle," all these things. There are a lot of good albums that are kept from being great because they have a couple tracks on them that are kind of meh, and like this is one thing that I've mentioned to a friend of mine is, I would take out Through the Never, End of Wolf and Man, and just have it be these what is that, 3, 6, like 10 tracks as opposed to the 12. And you get the running time down a little bit too. Like you get it down to like 50 something minutes instead of being an hour, and I think that sometimes albums should be tighter um than longer, but it's one of those things where I can kind of see both sides of the argument where, as a music fan, I would always take more music over less music. But at the same time, in terms of the album having a good punch, from start to finish, I would say that some albums, are definitely bloated beyond what they reasonably should, be up to, so to speak. But yeah, there's my Black Album tier list. But we've got 2 more albums to get through, which I have prepared. So yeah, now we're gonna get into Load, which I think is a massively underrated Metallica album. I really like Load, right? I hate the artwork and I hate the stylistic direction the band went in terms of the look and stuff. It was absolute unmitigated 90s cringe in kind of the weirdest emo dad way possible. It's just really bad. The imagery of the band during this period was fucking awful. But the album itself, I think, is actually really strong. And we'll begin with Ain't My Bitch. I would put this in great. I think it's a good opener, and also kind of like this is kind of like what Holier Than Thou kind of could have been in terms of a transition from one style of Metallica to another. Because it's got a very driving kind of like upbeat sort of tempo and riff. And it's a thing that kind of takes some of the ideas of kind of what Holier Than Thou was as a song in terms of a transition from previous album to this one. This one kind of does the same for that, where it kind of takes the direction of the previous album and kind of morphs it into the current direction they're going in for this album. And also just that title is just funny. So I got to give it that. All right, next we got 2x4. I like 2x4. And I like the main riff, but nothing really stands out to me besides the main riff and just kind of like how it's got a good kind of like headbangy sort of slow groove to it, or a slower groove to it. It's not really slow, but you know what I mean. But then we got The House Jack Built. I like that song a good bit. I like how it's got that kind of restrained sort of groove to it, which is kind of a running theme throughout this and Reload. Just kind of like restrained groove sort of a thing where you're kind of like they're holding back from going too thrashy, which makes a lot of the songs have sort of a magnetizing sort of almost AC/DC style kind of groove to the way the riffs work. It's kind of similar to if you've ever heard the demo version of Sad But True, the riff sounds so happy when you play it too fast. But when you slow it down, it makes it heavier and makes it sound more menacing. And it's similar to a lot of these riffs. If you speed it up too much, it can kind of change the vibe of the song for the worse. All right. Then we got Until It Sleeps. I like Until It Sleeps a good bit. The subject matter is interesting. Again, dealing with James Hetfield's mother's death. A lot of introspective and personal stories in the Black Album, Load and Reload, which I think are part of the reason why they're kind of a different era from the 80s Metallica stuff and later stuff. It's like different, there's always been a little bit of Hetfield in each album, but it really starts creeping up with Dyer's Eve at the end of Justice. But the Black Album, Load and Reload have some really good, personal stories that are actually personal. They're not just a vague idea of emotion. They're more like they're actually personal, But yeah, like that song. And there's one thing. I think King Nothing is a good song. It's one of those songs that doesn't really stick with me a lot. Like I don't really ever go back to Load to listen to King Nothing, but I enjoy it when I do listen to it. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like caught in the middle. All right, now we're getting to some of the songs that I actually really do like on the album. I really like Hero of the Day. Just it I like the way it sounds. And I think it's interesting. And if I remember correctly, I think someone said that this is the only Metallica album that's written in a major key, which it kind of sounds like it. But I'm not an expert on major, minor, and all that other shit. So let me know if I'm wrong or if somebody was wrong. But either way, I like the song. And Bleeding Me has grown on me a lot in recent years. I've really grown to really enjoy listening to Bleeding Me. Just that kind of riff is the riffs become more and more hypnotic as I've kind of grown older and listened to it more. Just it's got a great sort of like introspective vibe, which I mean a lot of these songs have. All right, now we got Cure. Let's see, where did I put this? I probably put this at okay. It's an okay song, but I probably skip it. There's no real hook for me in terms of the riffs and stuff like that. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. Same thing for Poor Twisted Me. Just it's okay. Like these songs feel like bloat. It's like good songwriters writing songs that they don't really care about that much, but it's kind of another thing. All right. Oh, hey guys. Hey, the people in the chat. Sorry, I haven't really been looking at the chat that much. Let's see, Brett Flicks Mazursky. Yeah, I've never been that into Metallica, but they're big admirers of my favorite band, Rush. So I'll always respect them for that. Yeah, it's speaking of that. Actually, it's really weird how like I'm really into a lot of bands that are I'm in a weird space where I really like a lot of like older metal bands, and I really like a lot of the quote unquote like younger metal bands. But like some of the influences in between I don't like, which is really weird. Like I really like Metallica, and I really I really love Metallica, and I really love Avenged Sevenfold, and I really love Disturbed, but I really don't like Pantera. Which is weird because like Pantera influenced Avenged and Disturbed a lot. So it's one of those weird things where it's kind of like I like your influences and who you inspired, but I don't like you. And it's like how does that work in my brain? I don't know. But yeah. And Leo says jump in the fire masterpiece. Yeah, I did a Kill 'Em All stream. I believe that was ESAS number 2. So if you want to go back, I have a playlist for all ESAS streams. So if you want to go check out that ranking, you can go check that one out. Although you might be a bit disappointed where I put Jump in the Fire. I'm not that big of a fan of it, but everyone's free to their own designs for how they want to listen and take in music. Anyway, getting back to this list here. Let's see, Wasting My Hate. I think that's okay. Now, kind of a controversial. I really have nothing to say on Wasting My Hate anymore. But I really like Mama Said, mainly because it's a very I'm not really into country music, like really at all. But I really like the sort of twangy sort of vibe of Mama Said. Also, just like the lyrics. I think it's a really deep dive into Hetfield's relationship with his mother. Which is kind of a running theme throughout this album. Lots of songs dealing with kind of his relationship with his mom and her passing and that stuff. All right, then we get Thorn Within. I actually kind of like Thorn Within a little bit. It's one of those things that I second guess skipping. One of those songs that I second guess skipping, but yeah, it's decent. These songs, though, I kind of forget. All right, Ronnie, not that big of a fan of. Just don't really care that much about it, one way or the other. It's got a decent riff, but just the rest of it, I just don't really care about it. And the Outlaw Torn is one of my favorites of Metallica. I love Metallica's longer pieces of music. Usually, To Live Is to Die feels kind of slow, but I usually enjoy their longer pieces of music, and this is definitely one of them. It's a fun song, and I like how I just like how it's kind of just a slow, brooding, heavy sort of thing. It's kind of like a proto um Inamorata. It's very proto Inamorata where it's just a long, slow, thick, heavy, kind of fucked up groove song that ends in sort of a jam. So yeah, I like that song a lot. But yeah, there's my load tier list, and I've sort of organized these in an awkward sort of way. Let's get into the last tier list we're going to do for today, which is going to be reload, which is going to be kind of fun. All right, so starting off with fuel, where we get the wonderful meme: "Give me chicken, give me fries, give me give me apples on the side." You know, and just a lot of good memes come out of that opening line there. But great driving song. It's just fun, and just the energy live with that song is great. All right, this is one thing. The Memory Remains is a weird song for me because I really like the live version they do where they get the crowd singing along, but I really don't like the guest vocal appearance on that song. Like it just feels really weird. And it's like not a good weird. It feels like an uncomfortable sort of weird. Like it feels like my grandma is losing her mind and just kind of whispering in my ear a melody she heard like 1,000 years ago. Right? Like it doesn't sound like I'm just not a fan of the Memory Remains in studio. Live, I really dig it. But just that the ending bit and the break bit with what's her name, Marianne Faithful, I think, doing her little It's like I want to slap you and like get off the track. You're making it weird. It's like when your parents come in and make a really cringy joke in front of a date, and you're like, stop making it weird. You're making it worse. But anyway, move on to Devil's Dance. I like Devil Dance a lot. I like that. I like that heavy, thick groove on the bass before you get that sort of like the chugging transition into the main riff. It's really good. I really like it. I really like Devil's Dance and that main groove. It's got a catchy tagline too. All right, and now we get to Unforgiven 2. I really like Unforgiven 2. The only thing that I would say about the Unforgiven trilogy as a whole is I kind of wish that they had done sort of different songs each time, because it's a really weird listen when you listen to Unforgiven 1, then 2, then 3, right? Because Unforgiven 1, it has a very clear identity. Unforgiven 2 is kind of a reverse dynamic version of Unforgiven 1, but then Unforgiven 3 is very different from 2, but like 1 at the same time. But it feels like a weird, like it's a weird thing to listen to when you listen to them together, like one at a time. It's not like it's not like a dream. Like I'm a big Dream Theater fan. Like it's not like Dream Theater's 12-step suite where you have the Glass Prison being a very ballsy, aggressive opener. Then you have This Dying Soul, which is also very aggressive and in your face. But it starts to introduce some quiet elements. Then you get The Root of All Evil, and it's a little bit more groove and it's not quite as aggressive. Then you get Repentance, which is kind of a breather, very psychedelic, kind of introspective piece. And then you get The Shattered Fortress at the end, where it brings everything home and kind of rounds out the overall story of the 12-step suite. And obviously, as far as I know, the band did not plan to write Unforgiven 1, then 2, then 3, right? Like, obviously, because they wrote the 3 songs across 17 years, 91, 97, and 08. So, like, who plans that shit, right? But, good song. And I like how it's kind of a twist on what the Unforgiven could have been if they had, like, changed the riffs around. So, like, the verse chords in Unforgiven 1 are the chorus chords in Unforgiven 2. And the chorus stuff in Unforgiven 1 is the verse, is like those same notes are in the verses for Unforgiven 2. It's a really interesting way to kind of repackage an old song in a new way, where it's kind of like what it could have been, but at the same time it's like a sequel. It's kind of weird. But we'll talk about Unforgiven 3 more when we get to it. But yeah, let's get through this list. All right, Better Than You. It's pretty good. I like it. There's no part in there that makes me kind of cringe a little bit, which is kind of like Memory Remains. Slither, I'd probably say the same thing. It's weird. There's a bunch of songs in the beginning of Load that I really like. There's a bunch of stuff in the middle that I just find is easy listening, but not really deep dive into. And then there are others later on that I really like. So it's kind of weird. Yeah, so like I think Carpe Diem's good. I think Bad Seed's good. I think Where the Wild Things Are is good. I think Prince Charming is good, but like all these songs kind of in the middle. And this is kind of the thing that talks about like Load and Reload was initially supposed to be a double album, but a lot of music would get lost in the mix if they released them both at the same time. And it's like even when listening to Metallica like on a playlist, when I'm doing something for a couple hours, it's like these songs just rush by, and I don't remember like hardly anything in them. It's very very, it's like it's good filler, but it's still filler. It's like they've got some solid grooves and some good melodies and good parts in them. It's just they're really forgettable after a time. But then we get to the last three tracks. I really like Low Man's lyric just because of how kind of weird it is, just the way they orchestrate it all. But yeah, it's a weird song that I kind of like for how weird it is. Whereas Memory Remains is very weird to the point where I don't like its weirdness. All right. I like Attitude just because it kind of lives up to its name. It's very in your face and sort of like, you know, aggressive and sort of fun. And again, another Metallica closer that I'm a big fan of when they just do the slow, spacey groove thing. Big fan. Big fan of Fixer. I have no idea what the lyrics are about, but I really enjoy the song and just kind of how spacey and weird it is. Again, some things are weird and can be good. Other things are weird and just kind of annoy me. Let us begin the tier lists of things. And what better place to start than Metallica's album Saint Anger, one that has been kind of divisive, and some people have kind of said that it's kind of like Metallica losing their minds, which I kind of get, but I kind of like that. So here we go. I also listened to this just a few hours ago, just kind of refresh myself on everything. So let's jump in, shall we? So first off is Frantic, and I'd have to put it up there as a masterpiece. I really like Frantic a lot. I think it's a really good aggressive tune, and I like how raw this whole album is in terms of the production. It's not super pristine and super clean. It feels like a very natural sort of album as opposed to being overproduced, where they make sure everything's pretty and in tune completely perfectly and all this other stuff. And also the description of the album, I think, is something that a lot of people miss regarding talking about this album. Is you can see it in the documentary Some Kind of Monster that when they went into making this album, Bob Rock said it's meant to be a band getting together in a garage for the first time, but that band's Metallica. Right. And I think they accomplished that sound pretty well. Not everything's, I think it's intentionally meant to be sort of raw and gritty. Whether you like that, that's up to you. But I think it was a pretty good idea, and I think they achieved what they set out to do. So fair play to them. But anyway, now let's get to the title track, Saint Anger. I really like Saint Anger, especially because I was a very angry youth for a while. I have since mellowed out with age, but I like Saint Anger. I think it's a good track. Now we get Some Kind of Monster. I'd put Some Kind of Monster as good. It's a little long-winded, and that's probably my biggest complaint of that song in general. It's a little longer than it probably needs to be, but overall, I still enjoy the song. All right, Dirty Window, I like. It's a good, like, shorter, kind of like punchy thing. I also just think the title is weird enough to be interpretable in different ways, which is kind of fun. All right, now we got Invisible Kid. I like Invisible Kid a lot. It's not up there with like Frantic and Saint Anger, but I do like Invisible Kid a good bit. And it's one thing where I kind of like the fact that it's about the same length as Some Kind of Monster, but I put it a little bit higher because it's got a faster pace to it. Whereas Some Kind of Monster is kind of a droning sort of thing. The riffs have fast parts in them in Some Kind of Monster, but the overall kind of like tempo is sort of slower at times. And I just like Invisible Kid's kind of like consistent, like, just kind of like, it's got kind of a bouncy, aggressive vibe, which makes no sense speaking it out loud, but Those are the words that are coming into my head at this time. All right, now we got My World. I like My World. I really like the main riff in it, and yeah, I like that. I think it's a pretty good song. It's one thing too where I kind of like how this album bounces back and forth between kind of longer and shorter things. It's a good way to balance a record. All right, now we got Shoot Me Again. I'd probably say that's good. There are parts in some of these songs where it's kind of like I'm not quite sure if I like this or if I think it's a little too weird, but I like this one. And Sweet Amber is one of those things where I'd say it's a great song, but there's one part in it that makes me want to put it in masterpiece, and it's I don't know if you call it a breakdown or a bridge, but the really fast part where you just got that where the riffs kind of kick up a little bit. Really enjoy that part. That part gives me goosebumps every time I listen to it. But overall, song is pretty great. All right, then we got The Unnamed Feeling. You know, and it's one of those things where this is one of those songs that has one of those weird parts where it's like kind of James Hetfield losing his mind, sort of a thing, kind of like in the middle of it. You know, it's kind of like I don't really know how I feel about it. I don't know if I like it or if I love it or if I dislike it. You know, it's one of those. I feel confused listening to it sometimes, where I'm just like, do I like this or not? And I can't make up my mind. I'd probably put it at good. All right. Purify was one of those weird ones that sort of like it's a very in and out sort of song, and I enjoy it, but I don't really come back to it. So I'd probably put it as good. All right, then All Within My Hands, I'd put up there because I like the way it's orchestrated, I guess is the way you could put it, where it's kind of this, kind of like weird mix of like talking about everything being in your hands, which, duh. But yeah, so I like it. And so I also like how the album kind of ends with the ending part of this track where it just kind of like sludgily kind of like fucks itself up. I find that kind of appealing. But yeah, that's the Saint Anger tier list done and dusted. Let's get this. Now I got freaking tab management. Yeah. I am great at this. I am super great at the streamies. But yeah, so let's get into Death Magnetic. And so Death Magnetic is an album that has Death Magnetic is kind of like a dark horse for me. It's when I think of Metallica albums, this isn't one of the first ones that pops up, but when I put it on, I thoroughly enjoy a good bit of it, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I really enjoy listening to this album as a whole, and it's one of those things where That Was Just Your Life. I really like the main riff and the really fast kind of like chordy chorus of it. It's just a good headbanging, just like, yeah, Metallica opener. All right, then I got End of the Line, which I think is good. It's probably one of the tracks that I like parts in it, but overall I think it's kind of good. But overall I like it. I like the chorus, and I also like the kind of like breakdown bit near the end before it ramps back up again. I think that's pretty cool. Then we get a Broken Beat and Scarred. And I like Broken Beat and Scarred a lot. And I like the way the chorus ramps up at the end, where it continues to kind of just headbang and headbang and headbang. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and yeah, I enjoy that a lot. The Day That Never Comes is one of those ones where classic Metallica style ballad, where it ramps up at the end. And also, I just really like the guitar play at the end. Basically, from the break where you can just hear Lars's drums, from there to the end, I love that whole section. I think it's got a lot of great selection of varying riff types in there. You've got the kind of chord jumping, that really fast chord changing thing is just like super heavy and headbangy. And then you've got the fast, I guess you call it triplets riff, where they're doing that tapping, where it's like, that bit, and then you get the lead on top of it, giving it some extra like dimension. Really like that riff. And I really like guitar. Almost said guitar Hammett. I really like Kirk Hammett's guitar solo in "The Day That Never Comes." I really like that part. And I like how they have the like the little wheedles before the solo and stuff kicks in. It's just a lot of good. There's just a lot of good guitar in that song. Like in general, the picking, the way they use octaves as kind of like a main melody sort of thing. The nice big anthemic chorus, bridge to the fast part. Then the whole fast part has just a bunch of great riffs in it. I think it's a really great song from start to finish. And in terms of like favorites from this album, this is definitely in my like top 3. Big fan. In case you couldn't tell. Another song I'm a big fan of is "All Nightmare Long," mainly just because it's just 8 minutes of just pummeling, just aggressive like guitar, just and I'd probably say my favorite part of "All Nightmare Long" is the I don't know what part you'd call it. It's like I don't know if it would be considered a breakdown in between a solo or like a midsection, like where the solo gets a break, but it's it's the bit where you get that where the lead guitar is doing a thing. I don't know if it counts as a solo. It probably is. But like it does the solo and it ends with a and you just have that super fast chugging on an open E string. That just kind of letting the heaviness and just letting the vibe just kind of go with just the fast aggressive shit. That part gives me goosebumps every time, and I love when Metallica does those little things where they just kind of let the notes breathe. They don't overcomplicate it with a whole bunch of like lead parts and stuff over it. It's just letting the aggression speak for itself, kind of a thing. So really enjoy that song. Really enjoy that one part. And Cyanide's a weird thing where I kind of go back and forth on whether I think it's great or whether I think it's good, because there's it's like I like the main riff and I really like the chorus. I really like the not the chorus. I like the chorus, but I really like the guitar solo in it. The thing is, though, the guitar solo in it kind of like it. I it's weird. Is I really enjoy the solo while it's on, but I keep forgetting it when I listen to the song and I want to skip the song. But when I listen to it, it's like I'm in this weird space of where I really like the solo, but I'd rather listen to the thing after it. So it's like a thing where I can't tell if it's my perception of the Unforgiven 3 that makes me want to skip to Unforgiven 3 as opposed to doing listening to Cyanide and then going into it. I don't know. It's kind of all over the place and a little weird. But I'd probably put it up in good. I'd probably put it up as good. Up is good. Up in good. All right, now we get the Unforgiven 3, which might be my favorite track from the album. I don't know. I've kind of got a 3-way tie for my favorite from the album. It's either Day That Never Comes, Unforgiven 3, or Suicide and Redemption. It's just one of those 3 is probably my favorite, but it depends on my mood, right? But I really like the Unforgiven 3. I like how it's kind of an homage to the way the original Unforgiven was made. But it is one thing where I find it kind of weird how Unforgiven 2 takes riffs, kind of reverts the dynamic and the riffs of Unforgiven 1. But then this one kind of goes back to that blueprint of Unforgiven 1. And I guess I would have liked a little bit more continuity between the 3 songs. But at the same time, it's like, Unforgiven 1 came out in 91, Unforgiven 2 came out in 97, and Unforgiven 3 came out in 2008, right? Like that's a huge time span. That's like 17 years for 3 songs. I doubt anyone's going to keep up with that, internally or even plan it, And plus, you kind of don't want to, like, Unforgiven 2 could be seen as a rehash. So if they rehashed it a third time with the same sort of like chords and riffs, I think the song would have been kind of unfairly compared to both of them and would have been weaker in general because of that. But really like Unforgiven 3. especially the chorus and the slow ramping up after the second chorus, leading up into the solo. That is a really good kind of like climactic, just slow build of intensity. And I love that shit. I love it. All right, then we get the Judas Kiss, and this is probably one of the songs on the album that I probably skip the most next to My Apocalypse. And it's like I enjoy the song and I enjoy some of the riffs in it, but it doesn't really stick with me that much. Um, and every time I think of the song, all I can think of is the intro to the guitar solo where they're doing that slow sort of like do 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 do. You get the lead guitar going wow 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 wow. You know, I just like for some reason that sticks in my mind for no real reason other than the fact that it sounds like a weird like 70s alien movie theme type of thing. But maybe that's just a me thing. But yeah, overall I like the song, but it's not up there with some of these other ones. Now we got Suicide and Redemption. Um, this along with Orion they're probably tied as my two favorite Metallica instrumentals. For different reasons, right? Like I really like Orion for its kind of overall orchestration, and also I think Orion has very impeccable riffs. I think every riff in Orion and every section in Orion is good, and also it's a weird kind of gentle mix of different vibes and things. It's got a very unique vibe to it, is what I think is a strength for Orion. For Suicide and Redemption, I think it has a bit more of a sort of character arc within the music itself, kind of where you start off with kind of the like heavy riffs, and the main riff I think is really catchy and really good. That I think that's a really good sort of like semi heavy riff that kind of sings at the same time. It's got a great kind of like chord structure where it uses a lot of different chords throughout the guitar neck to kind of accentuate the different sounds it has. And I really like that. And the I really like the sort of middle bits of it where you get the quiet part. And this is one thing that I think always gets to me about certain Metallica ballads when they have that quiet part is I think they usually do it really well. And I think Suicide and Redemption nails that. And and that's the thing where I think the title really fits with the music, where it's just like, it's just a really like the notes they used in the sort of quiet like middle section are just really sad. Just like it's like it's not like somber, it's not threatening, it's just sad, like just pure sadness, and you can just kind of let that wash over you when listening to it. And I think that's a strength of the song, like as a whole. And that's just something that I think makes the listening experience that much more enjoyable, when you can kind of just vibe with it, and let it build and build and build and build until you kind of get to the like main solo, and then like the ending, and kind of like climax and reach up. So great instrumental. Definitely up there for me. And then we have the closer, My Apocalypse. I'm not that big of a fan of My Apocalypse. It's a fun song to listen to, and I like how it ends, just kind of going super fast, and also the line and it spit it out. I think is fun. It's a great ringtone. so, so if I can clip that and turn it into a ringtone, I might do that in the future. But we'll have to see how that goes. But that's a lot of fun. I really like how it ends too, with the kind of my apocalypse and just the chords. It feels like the ending to a concert kind of a thing, where they kind of just like end on a big chord, just kind of jam, and then just end it. But yeah, it's one of those things where I enjoy certain parts of it, and it's a good listen. But it's one of those things that I would skip around. It's that's kind of thing. The good category is basically songs that I like but would skip to get to other things. Like I'd skip End of the Line to get to The Day That Never Comes. I'd skip Cyanide to get to Unforgiven 3. I'd skip Judas Priest to get to Suicide and Redemption, and then I'd skip My Apocalypse to get to like something else. You know, kind of the way I look at it. But that was Death Magnetic. So now let's get into Hardwired. And Hardwired was a little bit of a weird listen to me throughout the years that I've owned it, because this was the first Metallica album that I bought fresh, like when it came out. Because I didn't really get into Metallica until like 2011 ish. That was probably when I really started getting into them. So this was the first album where I could actually jump in and be like, yeah, new Metallica album, yeah, and just have fun with it. But get into this, start with Hardwired. And I really like Hardwire's riff, and it's a really short, punchy, sort of like "we're fucked" kind of song, and I kind of like that. I kind of like how kind of punk rock it is in terms of just how it's kind of short, sweet, in your face, aggressive, vulgar, and to the point. And just a really good riff, really good main riff. All right, then we get to Atlas Rise, and I really like Atlas Rise. I really like the main riff of it, and sort of the bridge solo, and then or sort of the bridge, and then I don't know what you call it, a breakdown or whatever, you know, but I really like the sort of the middle bits of the song, where you got the really chugging riff before you get into a solo, and then you got kind of the solo link up at the end, where it's like the two guitars, like, doing like noodling together. I love that shit, and also it's got a really good driving sort of beat to it. And kind of on the other end of that, we got Now That We're Dead. And Now That We're Dead, I really like for the groove aspect of it. It's got a really good, solid, thick, heavy groove and riff. And it's just a good kind of like casual headbanger sort of thing. It's not super intense, but it's like that thing where you can kind of like tap your foot to it and be like, yeah, And it's a good kind of like slower riff. It's not technically a slow riff per se, but it's a slower riff. And I like the riff. I think it's a really good, sort of thick, heavy riff. All right, then we get into Moth into Flame. Moth into Flame. And I really like Moth into Flame, but I'd probably put it next to Hardwired, just because I really like the chorus of Moth into Flame and lead guitar bits, but I'm not really that big of a fan of the verses, mainly because the riff is kind of simple. But I really like the chorus and the lead guitar stuff they do in it with kind of the main melody that and all that stuff. I really like that lead guitar kind of layering and build up. And also, I think it's got a really catchy chorus. But I'm not a big fan of the verses. All right, now we got Dream No More, and I'd probably put Dream No More as great, because I like how it's sort of it's a very Black Sabbathy sort of like heavy song, and it's a very it's very much a sort of like more kind of like it's like a sad but true, with a little bit faster of a tempo, you know, and the heavy bits in the riffs are really accentuated by how little notes are used in some of the riffs at certain times, and just that bangy bit. The bangy bits like around the chorus are really fun. So like I really like how just head bangy it is, and also it's a good kind of dynamic between songs when you get these kind of different vibes. Where when you look at the song order, you have like Hardwire's very fast. Atlas Rise has a more up tempo groove. Now That We're Dead is kind of slowing down a little bit. Moth into Flame's a little bit more thrashy, and then Dream No More is just back to that kind of like slow, heavy, sort of like thunderous type of riffing. All right, then we got Halo on Fire. I really like Halo on Fire, and I really like it for just kind of the dynamic of it, where it's sort of a ballad of sorts in a way. It's a weird kind of it's an almost Metallica ballad. You know what I mean? Where the first bit has like a quiet verse, and then it's got the heavy chorus, and then it builds up to this guitar stuff in the second half, but it's not really the same kind of dynamic as what you typically get from a Metallica ballad, where you have like two guitars doing like lead stuff and then like a big fantastic solo. It's got more of just kind of like a jamming melodic vibe at the end, and I like that. It's kind of a different take on their own sort of thing. All right, but then we got this is one thing. That's the first half of the album, right? And the reason I point that out is because the second half out of the album is where I think a lot of things kind of take a dip, for me at least. And it's a thing where there are a lot of songs that I would probably put in the good category, like and it's a thing where like when I come to the album, I will listen to the first like 6 songs and really enjoy them, right? And really enjoy like certain parts of them or certain songs in general, as you can see from the masterpiece tier. And but this is the thing where when I get to the second half of the album, I skip almost everything in the second half up to Spit Out the Bone, right? Like Confusion, Man Unkind, Here Comes Revenge, Am I Savage, Murder One. They all have good parts in them, right? But just every time I come to the album, by the end of Dream No More, when Confusion starts, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm gonna skip this. Then I think of Man Unkind. It's like, okay, I want to skip that. Then I think of Here Comes Revenge. Then I want to skip that. It just kind of repeats over and over and over. And there are good riffs and stuff in there. There are good parts in all of these songs. It's just songs overall are not up to the same level as the first 6 songs. And the last song, Spit Out the Bone, which might be my favorite off the album just because it's a big, just kind of riff adventure, super high energy, super aggressive and kind of a bleak, it's a very metal song, right? Just in the whole way it's orchestrated. You got a really fast riff in the beginning, really simple chorus that's very in your face and kind of spitting stuff out, spitting out the bone, as it were. And then you get the kind of progressive bit for the rest of the song where you get a whole bunch of different riffs and vibes. You get that really slow riffage going on after you get the melodic sort of bits after, and just the kind of the middle verse bits, where it's just going, it's just banging as hard as it fucking can, and you've got Headfield singing some really good simple melodies over these big like sort of like chord like thrashing bits. It's just a really good song from beginning to end with a lot of great riffs just kind of stuffed into it. And it's kind of a medley of a bunch of different things. And I love that song because of the medleyness of it. It's just got a bunch of cool shit in it. It's got a bunch of cool stuff in it. And I really like the overall orchestration of it. But yeah, overall, so here's kind of how this is my list. So yeah. All right, and now we've got one more to go. The recent release, 72 Seasons. And 72 Seasons has been an interesting listen to me because there's been a lot of things where I've seen a lot of people's complaints about this album specifically. And I kind of agree with some of them to an extent, but we'll get through that as we go. But yeah, so the title track I think is great, but it kind of suffers from a similar problem to the record as a whole in that it's kind of a little drawn out. It might be a better song overall if they like maybe cut a couple riffs in half where they only play them like twice instead of 4 times, kind of a thing. Now normally I'm a big fan of riff time, right, where you just kind of let the riffs do the talking. But it is a thing where just a lot of the songs on this album feel like they could have been cut just a little bit. Like you could have cut maybe 30 seconds off of each song or some songs and they'd be a better song overall. It's like they're still good, but they just go on a little bit. And 72 Seasons is one of those things where I love listening to it, but it does feel like it goes on a little too long. All right. Then we got Shadows Follow, which I like, but it's kind of, I like less than 72 Seasons, and I think it suffers from the same problem. Just kind of goes on a little bit too long. Screaming Suicide, I do like. It's a little gimmicky with kind of the title and the lyric subject matter, but I'm kind of okay with that. And also, I just think it has some good riffs in it. All right. This is one thing. Like some tracks on this album, I think would be considered okay, right? Like "Sleepwalk My Life Away" and "You Must Burn." Like they're kind of tracks that I just listened to them like an hour ago. I don't fucking remember them. There wasn't anything in them that made me go, "Oh, that was shit." But it's just kind of they're a fun listen while they're on, but they're kind of forgettable. And that's kind of the problem with some of the songs on the album is because they go on so long, they kind of lose their luster very quickly, and you're kind of ready for them to end. but that's also highlighted by some songs that you see around, like when Lux Eterna came out, putting that up there in Masterpiece, that song is an immediate, in your face, fun anthem with a great main riff. And that's the song that, like, every time I think of the album, I immediately come back to that song, just because it's a great riff. It's a really catchy riff that sticks in your head the whole time. Got a really great, simple, kind of like, no holds barred, sort of like seize the day sort of chorus. It's really simple and easy to get into. And also, it's just a really short, compact song. This is one thing that I'm talking about, right? Is a lot of the songs feel like they go on for too long. I want this song to keep going, and that's the kind of thing that I think kind of happens with short, great songs. Is you want them to keep on going. You want to come back to the main riff again. You want to come back to the chorus again. You know, and it's one of those things where I really like Lux Eterna. It's just a fun, catchy, just kind of like, living life to the fullest sort of thing. And it's just a really great, short, fun, uplifting, high energy anthem. I think, that's the thing. I haven't seen this song live yet, which I kind of need to, because I want to see what the live version of that song is like, because I imagine it would have some great crowd participation in it. But yeah, so that's that. All right, then we get to some of the other songs, and just again, it's just, Crown of Barbed Wire, Chasing Light, and Room of Mirrors. I want to skip around a little bit, but like, just again, like songs that I enjoyed listening to while I was listening to them, but then I immediately forgot them. Like, I immediately forgot all of them, right? And for those who are wondering what bad would qualify as, they are songs where I think the band actually fucked up with either the songwriting or the parts, or just have some really bad orchestrations that don't really mesh well with what's going on. So yeah, okay is stuff that I enjoy while listening to, but find kind of forgettable. Bad is reserved for things where I actively dislike something. It's not something that's mid. It's something that I actively dislike. So just throwing that out there for future tier lists I plan to do in the future. But yeah, then we get to If Darkness Had a Sun, and I'd probably put that on good. I like parts of it, and I like some of the riffs in it, but it's not quite up there where I think it's a really good song like these two, or really great like in Masterpiece. Now, this is where I kind of the album gets some redeeming factors for me. I really love Too Far Gone. I think it's a really, like, it's kind of like Lux Eterna, where it's got a short, punchy sort of tune for it. I mean, it's like 5 minutes long. Is it 4 or 5 minutes long? I don't know. Either way, I can't remember because I'm too busy thinking about, just the chorus, because the chorus really sticks in my head for Too Far Gone. And I really like the chorus of it, and just it's a really simple in and out sort of song where you can really kind of enjoy it, and then it's kind of done. And it has similar vibes to Lux Eterna for me. I think Lux Eterna is better, just in terms of the overall package, but I still really like Too Far Gone. And whenever I think of the album, I will skip to Too Far Gone, just because I really like the chorus of it. It's a really catchy chorus. And then we get what I think is kind of a mixture of different things Metallica is really good at, and that's Inamorata. And I'm putting that up there a Masterpiece, not simply because other fans are simping for it like crazy, but because I think it's a really good example of Metallica taking some of the better elements of their Load and Reload era and applying it to kind of their modern releases. Because it's a very slow, heavy song, and it's got a great vibe to it of just kind of contemplating sort of misery the whole time. And I think it's the thing where the riffs can sound a little slow at times, but I think it makes up for it in the fact that it leads to these very the kind of quiet parts in the middle that build up to kind of a great jam to kind of end the album with. And I think it's a really interesting song just to think about, like lyrically, and also just the orchestration of it. I think is a great sort of mid-tempo jam, kind of in a similar vein to the Outlaw Torn and Fixer, from Load and Reload, respectively. It's just kind of a slow, thought-provoking sort of jam, and that's one reason why I like it so much. Is I think a really good, thought-provoking jam. And it's also really nice to see Metallica record their own song that's over 10 minutes long. That's their longest song. I like when bands say, "Hey, we're going to one up our previous longest song and make an even longer one." I like that. It's like a dick measuring contest that means nothing, but I still enjoy it. But yeah, so that's all of Metallica's studio releases ranked. To those of you who made it this far, thanks for watching. If you'd like to see my other stuff, there are links to all my channels in the description. The main channel focuses on critical analysis of various mediums. The gaming channel focuses on general playthroughs and chill gaming content. The music channel holds various musical mashups, documentaries, discussions, and original works. The ESAS channel features archives of my Every Saturday a Stream series, which happens, you guessed it, on Saturdays, where I stream whatever and we chat. You can also check out my religious channel where I read the Bible and talk about different stories of how my faith has impacted my life. If any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to give it a shot. Whether you do or don't, I'd like to thank you again for watching, and God bless.